Yes, the title of this video is true. I saved $18,907 on a recent trip to Italy using credit card points. A lot of what we talk about on this channel is how to earn the most credit card points and maximize every single dollar you spend, but none of that matters if you don't actually use them. That's why in this video, I want to do an intensive breakdown of exactly how I booked the flights and hotels for this luxury trip to Italy, including the number of points I had to use with each lender and what cent per point values I got. And be sure to join us very soon when I do a full live stream breaking down my experience on this trip in case you're looking to do something similar yourself. The first thing I do whenever booking any trip these days is check my total point balances with each lender that I have points from. That way I can see which currencies I have the most of and which ones I want to use up. At the time of booking this one, my Amex membership rewards point stash was the highest out of any currency, so I knew I wanted to lean on them where possible. And at the same time, while I didn't have a lot of points with them back then, I knew that I definitely wanted to use my Capital One Venture miles, since the best way to squeeze the most value from them is for these international high-class flights. I don't know if y'all feel this too, but with how many offers I've gone for over the past few years, I have a bunch of points in different currencies, and sometimes I hate leaving like a small amount of a balance with random lenders, so trips like this are a perfect opportunity for me to use some of those up. That said, the flights are pretty straightforward. I knew I'd be using my Amex membership rewards points and Capital One Venture miles for the long haul flights, and if I needed to book a positioning flight to find the best deal, well, I would just figure that out down the line. Hotels were a bit trickier though. My main options here would be to use my Marriott points directly earned from my Marriott Boundless card, my Chase Ultimate Rewards or Built Rewards points to transfer over to Hyatt, or my Amex membership rewards points to transfer to Hilton. However, that option really isn't very good unless you transfer during a transfer bonus period from Amex to Hilton, but that wasn't going on at the time, so I decided to focus in on either booking with Marriott or Hyatt. That's step one wraps now. I had a rough understanding of what lenders I would need to utilize to book both the flights and the hotels. So now it was time to get into the weeds, starting with the departing flight. This is where points maximalists like us can get stuck the longest looking for that one perfect redemption. But the reality is that redemption just doesn't exist. You can spin your wheels here forever and just burn yourself out. On the flip side, this is where a lot of everyday travelers don't spend nearly enough time, and they'll usually just end up using their points for the cheapest economy flight they can and call it a day. Here's the problem with that though. It misses the sweet spot deals where business or first class flights might have comparable costs to an economy flight, or even if it is more expensive, it can be a massive jump in your experience on that trip. Trust me, getting a lie flat seat in business class to actually allow you to sleep for a few hours on your way to a foreign country is just such a game changer. So my approach when booking flights like this is basically somewhere in the middle of those two camps. I don't chase perfection, but I do look long enough to find those outsized value redemptions that will massively increase my comfort and experience on my trips. And where do I start with this process? Seats.aero. I'll leave a link down below for y'all to check this one out if you want to. And just know that to do what I did in this redemption, you will need to have the pro version, but you can copy what I did and just pay for it for a month, and that costs like $10 or something. Book your trip and then cancel it after. However, if you are booking a lot of international flights every year, then it could very well be worth just paying for the annual plan. For my first search, I plugged in Austin, Texas to every major airport in Italy, those being in Rome, Milan, and Venice. And my dates were somewhat flexible, but I knew that I wanted to be going in the mid-September timeframe since that's when I read it was a bit less crowded but still had really great weather. So I checked the box on Seats.aero to add plus or minus 3 days to my target date of September 15th in case there were some really good deals somewhat close to that date, but not exactly on it. I also set the minimum available seats to 2 and filtered to business and first class flights, and also capped the fees at under $400 per ticket. Here is a big tip for any of y'all looking to fly to Europe anytime soon. A lot of times you'll find pretty good points cost options that route through London Heathrow, but the taxes and fees associated with touching down in London Heathrow is way more than other airports, and it can push into that like $1,000+ range per ticket. So even though the points cost is cheaper, it's not worth it. Speaking of fees, the one that I always avoid, even on a week-long trip like this, is a checked bag fee. And one of the only ways I'm able to do that is thanks to Extra's travel bag vacuum kit. As y'all know, I've been using Extra's products for years, not only their wallets, but also their weekender bag, tech case, finder cards, and now this vacuum kit. These bags save up to 60% in my carry-on, which is obviously a ton of room, plus they're odor-proof and waterproof to keep my clothes fresh. They've become an essential travel accessory for me, especially on long-haul trips, and they honestly pay for themselves multiple times over because of those saved checked bag fees. Right now, Extra is running their fall sale from September 17th to November 5th with up to 35% off site-wide. And on top of that, if you use my link and code below, you can stack another 10% off, making your discount up to 45% off. And to sweeten the deal even more, Extra is giving away 2 of the travel pack vacuum kits in this video. All you have to do to enter is make sure you're subscribed, comment below the video, and DM me on Instagram your YouTube handle so that I can match things up and reach out to you as quickly as possible. Huge thanks to Extra for sponsoring this video. And again, don't forget to use my code SpencerJohnson at checkout for that additional 10% off. The only flights that came up in that search that I did were 2 Air France flights leaving on the 15th, one to Rome and one to Milan. At first glance, I'm sure the first thing you notice is just how much more expensive the business class flights are than the economy ones. So the good news is that if you're somebody that is just trying to get there for as cheap as possible, you can do so in economy really easily. But I really wanted to spoil my girlfriend on her first trip to Europe, and obviously I personally prefer to lie flat in a business class seat. So thankfully, I'm very blessed to earn a ton of points from welcome offers and referrals thanks to you guys. So I decided to go bougie with it and only consider the business class options. Leaning towards the Rome option out of the 2 that I mentioned, I immediately went to Air France's website to confirm availability. And sure enough, it was there, but better yet, it was actually cheaper on their website than Seats.aero was reporting, where for both of us in business class, it would have cost either $7,442 in cash, which is a price I would never pay out of pocket for, or just 189,000 points and $537.60 in taxes and fees. If you were to value those points at a 1 cent per point rate in cash form, that means I effectively would be using $1,890 worth of points plus the $540 or so in taxes and fees for basically a $7,500 flight, making it 67% off. Running a quick calculation here, that would give me a 3.65 cent per point valuation, which is a number I am way more than happy with. To complete the booking, which I didn't do until after I found my returning flights, just in case I had to get a little bit more weird with it. Like I said earlier, I knew I either wanted to use Amex membership rewards points or Capital One Venture miles. And since I knew I didn't have enough Capital One Venture miles to cover me for both legs of the trip, I decided to just use Amex points for this first flight. So I logged into my Amex account, accessed my membership rewards through my Amex Blue Business Plus, and transferred exactly 189,000 Amex points over to my connected Air France KLM Flying Blue account. A couple of minutes later, the points posted to my Air France account, and I was able to just book the flight directly through them. Just like that, a $7,500 flight was booked for less than a $2,500 cash equivalent price using points. That's step 2 complete, so let's move to step 3, the returning flights. Unfortunately, this step was not as straightforward as the last because for whatever reason, they did not have any flights from any Italian airport back to Austin using just one airline. This is actually the exact same situation I faced when flying to and from Croatia. Like it was almost the exact same itinerary, which is really funny. But no matter what, I knew I was just going to have to get creative with some kind of positioning flight to make this booking happen. Don't worry, I'm going to save you the hours and hours that I spent researching what flight might be best for the situation. And we'll just cut to the highlights here. First, the parameters of my search were basically the exact same as before. But this time, instead of having Austin as my destination, I just put in USA, which means I filtered to all of the major airports in the US. And in doing so, a few interesting options popped up. The first one that caught my eye was from Milan to Chicago for just 70,000 points per person in business class, which would have been cheaper than the departing flight. But looking closer, it would have required me to switch between Ethiopian Airlines and Swiss Airlines for the first 2 legs, not to mention I had a third one I would still have to book, and both of which had pretty poorly rated business class products, which was my first red flag. Still, I decided to check my options from Chicago to Austin just in case. And one decent United flight came up at 1:15 p.m. for 16,900 points per person. The problem, my layover in Chicago would have only been like an hour long, and I don't know about you, but that's just a little bit too risky for me. That would mean that I needed those first 2 legs to go through perfectly with no delays for me to even have a chance at getting on that next flight. And I definitely didn't want to be stuck in Chicago after 12 hours worth of flights with nowhere to stay, so I decided to keep looking for different options. When doing so, I found a different flight from Milan, this time to JFK using Emirates. Unfortunately, it was more expensive, but I knew that if I could just stay on the same carrier for those first 2 legs and have a better business class product in general, it would have been worth the cost. So going to their website, I found those exact 2 business class flights that I needed with a cash price of $5,661.70 or 174,000 miles plus $290.61 in taxes and fees. That's a cash equivalent of $1,740 worth of points plus the $290 in taxes and fees for a $5,661 flight, which is about 64% off. In other words, that's a 3.1 cent per point redemption rate, making it almost a no-brainer, in my opinion. Everything was looking great now, but there was one big hurdle that I still had to jump, and that is getting from JFK to Austin after landing in JFK at 6:55 p.m. I knew that would immediately cut the amount of options I have getting back to Austin on that day since it was getting pretty late. But back to Seats.Aero I went with nonstop only toggled with no flexibility added, obviously. And lo and behold, there was only one flight option that kept popping up, AA2772. I didn't have any American Airlines miles personally, and a lot of y'all may be thinking, well, dang, I guess you're gonna have to use cash for that one. But the consistent viewers know that I have a backup method to booking American Airlines flights, and that is through One World Alliance partners, specifically Alaska Airlines, now Atmos Rewards. Back when I booked this, I had just recently hit the welcome offers on my Alaska business card and my Hawaiian business card. So I had plenty of miles laying around in my Alaska account to make this booking happen, but there was no guarantee that Alaska would have that American flight on their website. After navigating over to their site, thank goodness they did have it on their website for just 25,000 miles and $36.20 in taxes and fees for both of us combined. American was charging $444.96 in cash for the same flight, so this was a steal. And unlike the Chicago option I mentioned earlier, we would actually have a 2-hour layover in JFK, which was plenty of time to get on that next flight, and fingers crossed, plenty of time for no issues to go on the first couple of legs. So the clear winner for us was the Milan to JFK option on Emirates, plus the JFK to Austin leg on American. For the Emirates portion, I knew I would be using Capital One Venture Miles, so I logged into my Capital One account, accessed my Venture Miles through my Venture X credit card, and transferred exactly 174,000 points to my connected Emirates Skywards account. Even though they told me it would take up to 24 to 48 hours for those points to be deposited, once again, only took a couple of minutes and I was able to complete the booking basically immediately. Then for the American leg, I booked that through Alaska's website as you would any other award booking since I already had the points lying in my account. Combined, that's another $6,107 worth of flights paid for using under $2,000 worth of points, and I am more than content with that. At this point in my booking process, I had all of my flights already done, so I knew I was going to be getting there and back, but I hadn't even started researching the hotels yet. Even though I limited myself to mainly Hyatt and Marriott properties, this research process was pretty extensive. Bottom line though, I knew I needed 3 different hotels, one for 3 nights in Rome, another for 3 nights in Florence, and a third for 1 night in Milan, since that's where we would be flying home from. The easiest place to start was the Milan hotel since the parameters were already set for me. I just needed something cheap and near the airport since all we'd really be doing there was sleeping. I quickly found a Hyatt-centric property that had great reviews and free breakfast, which was perfect for what we were looking for. And it had a cash price of $463.13 with a points price of 23,000 Hyatt points, making that a 2.03 cent per point redemption. And because it was such a small amount of points and I wanted to save my Chase Ultimate Rewards points for the longer hotel stays, I transferred over 22,000 points from Bilt since I did have 1,000 left over in my Hyatt account from past bookings and booked that 1 night stay. With Milan sorted, I moved on to Rome and Florence, the big dogs of this trip. Since I only had enough Marriott points for one of the 2 cities, I decided to just compare all of my options in both at one time. The Marriott hotels that stood out to me were the Pantheon Iconic Rome, the Rome Edition, Westin Excelsior Florence, Sina Villa Medici, and the W Florence. Now that I had those in mind, my other hotel chain I would be looking at was Hyatt, so I pulled up my options between the 2 cities with them. And the only 2 that were even really viable at the time were the Tribune in Rome and the IL Tornabuoni in Florence. Sorry for butchering that. I'm not Italian, but hey, those are the options, okay? The second option there did look incredible, but there was no availability at that hotel on the dates that we were staying there. And that may have been a blessing in disguise in the end because it was about 2.5 miles away from where we'd be wanting to walk during the day. And it cost 40,000 points per night, which would have been a big hit to my Chase point balance, regardless of how good that cent per point value was. That only left the Tribute in Rome as my Hyatt option for the trip, where the video reviews were strong, people on Reddit absolutely loved it, and the 29,000 points per night cost was extremely reasonable. The cash price for all 3 nights was $1,641.98 or 87,000 Hyatt points. That's a 1.89 cent per point valuation, which is above my baseline redemption rate for Chase Ultimate Rewards points of 1.5 cents per point. So I transferred from Chase to Hyatt and booked it. The final piece now was Florence, and obviously we just booked a Hyatt hotel in Rome, so I knew I'd be using my Marriott points for Florence. So the 3 properties I had to decide between were the Westin Excelsior, the Siena Villa Medici, or the W Florence. Pretty quickly, I ruled out the W since it just looked too modern and Americanized for what I was going for. So comparing the final 2, both had that like extra charm I was looking for, but the Westin did end up winning because it was closer to where we'd be walking every day. It was right by the river, had better reviews, and the cent per point value was slightly higher than the other. The cash price for 3 nights at this hotel was really insane. Everything in Florence is expensive, but it would have cost $3,248.84, or a points price of 330,000 points plus $53.27 in taxes and fees. That comes out to a 0.97 cent per point valuation, which sounds bad on the surface. Obviously, you never want to transfer from Chase to Marriott at a 1-to-1 rate and get that redemption rate. But since I was using Marriott points that I earned directly through Marriott credit cards, this is actually really, really solid. Booking that completely drained my Marriott points balance, but I really didn't care because it was going to be such a nice luxury stay while we were in Italy, and you can't beat that. Boom. Now all of my flights and hotels have been booked for a full week in Italy, almost solely using points. I know I've thrown a lot of numbers around so far, so I want to kind of condense things in this section and give you some combined calculations. First, here's a quick look at the cent per point values I got with each of the 6 programs that I used. Amex and Capital One came out highest at 3.65 and 3.1 cents per point for the business class flights, which of course makes sense. And the hotel redemption values were modest but still strong, from 0.97 cents per point booking directly with Marriott up to about 2 cents per point for my Chase and Bilt points transferred to Hyatt. Altogether, the total cash price of this trip would have been $18,906.61. Instead, here's what I actually paid using points and some fees. 189,000 Amex membership rewards points, 174,000 Capital One Venture miles, 87,000 Chase Ultimate rewards points, 23,000 Bilt rewards points, 25,000 Alaska Airlines miles, 330,000 Marriott Bonvoy points, plus $917.68 in taxes and fees. All of that gives my total trip an effective redemption rate of 2.17 cents per point if you include the Marriott points, but that definitely drags things down since they're not on the same level as the transferable currencies. So removing that, I got an average cent per point value of 3.14. As y'all know, I really don't care about cent per point values at the end of the day. Even a year from now, maybe even a couple of months from now, I will not remember what cent per point values I got for this trip, but I will have made lifelong memories with my girlfriend that I would trade any amount of points for in the world. Bottom line is that I didn't have to pay anywhere near the $20,000 that somebody without points and miles would have paid. And I don't know about you, but that is exactly why I play the points and miles game. The tricky part about this game, though, is that it is not actually free travel. And if you want to learn more about my thoughts on that topic, I made a full video in the past that you can check out here. As always, Odin and I both really appreciate you watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.